This is Digging In, a leadership series brought to you by Eagle Center for Leadership President, Melissa Hambrick Jackson. This episode, we pick back up with Eagle Consulting CEO, Dr. Larry Little, as we continue exploring what it looks like to cross the line. We invite you to subscribe to our channel and get notifications when new episodes are dropped. Let's join Melissa and Larry as they explore each of the components for the below-the-line equation.
Hey everyone, welcome to Digging In. Today we have Dr. Larry Little and we're picking up our conversation of Crossing the Line. Crossing the Line is his new book that is out and I want you to get it. You need this book in order to help you at home and help you at work and all areas of your life. So we talked last time about above the line and what that looked like and the pieces of the equation to that. So today we're going to talk about below the line. We're going to talk about what are the pieces that make up being below the line and how do you do that successfully, and then how do you cross that line completely. So thank you for being with us.
It is an honor, and thank you for allowing us to talk about this. I think it's really an important topic that helps us in our relationships, personally and professionally. And so once we get aligned and you know, we know that this is where we're headed, this is what we want, that's incredible. But if we stop there, we've accomplished nothing. And that's why below the line is also equally as important. So I'm excited about talking about the execution piece of crossing the line today.
So let's go through and let's look at each piece that makes up that work below the line so we can clearly understand how to define it and how to act in that. So that first piece is about goals. That sounds pretty easy. Goals.
Yeah, doesn't it? It's been around forever, and everybody talks about it, right? A lot of talk about goals. The problem is that many times goals are first of all, they're not measurable. They may be intangible. They may be, you know, my goal may not be your goal. We find ourselves. So I will say that being focused, aligned helps us with that, to know this is where we're headed. This is what we're committed to. Now the how-to is, so now we have some framework for our goals. It's really important when we set goals that we get buy-in from everybody on these goals and that we set the right kind of, everybody knows about SMART goals, those goals that are specific and measurable and all that, and that's important. More important than that, I would say, is that not necessarily that they have to be smart, although that's a great idea, but they have to be right. They have to have, we have to have the right goals. We have to have the goals that are meaningful. We have to have goals that helps us to get to where we want to get to, whether on a team or whether in a home. You know, we like goals because we like, you know, checking those boxes and that. But you know what happens if we set the wrong goals? We just spin. We're just burning out. We're busy checking off boxes that really don't mean anything. So really important to say, all right, if we're in a relationship at home with our family, with someone that we love and care about, what are our goals to accomplish our focused alignment? And let's get some agreement around that and make sure that we are talking about the right things, the right kinds of goals. You know, if we have, you know, your goal may be in a home, you know, your goal may be, I want us to have a beautiful yard. I want to spend time and energy and resources on the yard. My goal might be, well, I want us to have incredible cars and trucks, and I want to have, I want to have that, and I want to spend resources on that because guess what? We have two goals, but you know, first of all, we're not aligned. And second of all, they're the wrong goals because we both can't get alignment. We can't get agreement on those goals.
So you've made reference to needing to be on the same page above the line first, and making sure that you know we're solid in our above the line, our relationship, our connection, our ability to be on each other's team. And so now we're taking that below the line, and then we've got to keep doing work. You know, we got to keep making sure you said the right goals. I think that's a key word there, right? Right. Making sure, are we going to go after the same thing together so we can work together, right? Not work against each other, but work together in whatever it is that we want to accomplish.
You know, so true. I had an executive and I learned so much from these men and women that I have walked with through the years, and he taught me, you know, it's really important that that you're measuring the right things. You can have the right, you can have goals all over the place, but if they're not the right goals, if you're not measuring the right things, if you're not going after it, he said, it's really, not only is it ineffective, he said it's destructive. It's frustrating because your team in the business world realizes, well, heck, we've been working ourselves to death trying to measure the wrong things, and we're still not getting the results we need, right? So the goals that lead to results have to be the right goals that we know that we want to set as a team, as a relationship, in order to get the results that we want. It sounds really easy, but it's really difficult to make sure we're setting right goals.
So the next piece is about data. So we got to have the right goals, so then we can have the right data. Help us kind of flesh that one out a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to measuring the right things. And if we just have goals and we say, okay, we have a goal to do this in our business, okay, that's our goal. We don't measure ourselves. Once we get the right goal, if we don't measure ourselves, if we don't, then how do you measure yourselves? Well, if we don't create data that give us some type of barometer, some type of thermostat, and really it's different kinds, Melissa. It's different kinds of measuring. So, for instance, in a business, if you have, let's take the managers. We'll call those kind of the management, mid-level management. They're kind of like they're the thermometer. They're a thermometer of this, and I heard this illustration. I think it's really powerful. So they can tell us they're taking the temperature. They're taking the temperature of this is what's going on with the goals, whether we're meeting them or not. A senior leadership team, though, they're more like a thermostat. What their job is to say, wait a minute, are we setting the temperature? Our job is to make sure we're measuring the right things, because our manager is going to give us the temperature. But if we're measuring the wrong things, if our thermostat isn't set to measure the right where we want it, it's not going to help us to get to where we need to be. So being a thermometer and measuring is important, but making sure the thermostat's set on what the right temperature is. What do we want our homes to be? Where do we want our businesses? Are we measuring correctly? Is important. And it takes a different type of thinking. So most of the time when we think about data, we think, oh, wow, that's tactical. Oh, wow, that's, it's in the weeds. No, it's about making sure that data sets the thermostat where it needs to set for us to be effective. So that means we got to analyze, do we have the right data? Are we measuring it correctly? What are we doing with that? How are we collecting the data? What are we doing with the data once we get it reported out to us? It's kind of complicated. And in the same way, though, it's really important in our home. We can be aligned all day long. We can set goals to say we want to accomplish, but if we're not measuring and looking at the results of what we're doing, if you have, for instance, a goal in your home to say, we want our mornings to run smoothly. When we get the kids up, we want to have an organized system to help us to run it better. Instead of everybody running, grabbing shoes and grabbing, clothes and lunches and trying to. No. We have a system we want to create, which is great. That's our goal. We want to create a system. 2 weeks, 3 weeks in, if everybody's still chaotic, we can have. Well, here's our system, but there's no measurement of if we're being effective with that. So that data would be sitting down and going and analyzing that night at dinner. How did it go this morning? What's our data tell us? Let's see now. I saw the bed wasn't made. I saw the toothpaste left on the counter. I'm making things up, of course, but analyzing that data is very powerful in our homes to slow down, look at what the data tells us, and then adjust. Yeah. It's really important, by the way, that these goals can be adjusted. Having the right goal means having a flexible goal that can be adjusted to make sure we're in the right direction.
I always say that data tells us a story, and we need to pay attention to the story. It may tell us, ultimately we're not measuring the right things.
Yeah.
It may tell, on a team or in a company, the manager's collecting data. It may be telling the directors that we're not measuring the right things. We're measuring things that aren't really important. We're measuring things just to measure,
right,
but that aren't going to give us the true story of what we need. So, the data piece, I think is important to flesh out, talk about, be able to have conversation to make sure you not only look at what's being measured, but you look at it from a totally different perspective too, a holistic perspective of, are we measuring the right thing and what is it telling us? And then, like you said, how do we make adjustments and tweak things if it's not lining up with our goals, or our goals aren't lining up with our data. So those pieces are so important because I think they work together.
I agree 100%. It's the biggest disconnect, I think, between management and leadership. I really believe that, because these guys and gals at the management level, they could be measuring and thinking they're hitting their numbers, for hitting our numbers. Well, it's the wrong numbers, because the results are coming out, and these guys and gals are looking at the leadership level at the result, and they're going, no, you guys are down here. Your temperature, you may be, you may say we're high, but you're really cold on the results. So we need to adjust some things and adjust our goals.
I'm sure you've heard leaders talk about data overload, and they have this data, and even managers that they're having to collect this. They're being told these are the spreadsheets they have to keep up with. This is the data they have to keep up with. In the end, it's creating a lot of frustration for them because they don't feel like we're really measuring the right things.
And that right there, what you just said, Melissa, that is I think one of the biggest areas of frustration and toxicity on teams, is that they find themselves working hard and they're overwhelmed with data, and they're already trying to keep things going, more data, and it's useless data. And they totally think about that. They feel invalidated. They feel like why are we doing? There's no purpose. Obviously, we weren't aligned. There's no the goals are wrong, and that leads to frustration, burnout. High attrition. I'm done. And in today's world, we know that's an important piece that we better make sure we're purposeful with what we're doing if we're going to retain our people.
So data, measuring the right data.
Let
it tell you a story. So the third piece in the below the line equation is accountability. So have the goals, have the data, and then have the actionable accountability. So how are you defining accountability in this equation?
It's the result, it's the action that comes after the data. It's the actionable things that we come up with based on if we have the right goals and the right data, then we're measuring the right things, then it's the actionable things that we do based on the results of the data. So let's use our home. Let's say we're at the dinner table, and our data tells us that our system for having organized, kind of getting out the door time in the morning, try to be better at that and get kids to school on time, and so we can get to work on time. We look at that and we go, well, we still have a mess in the bedroom. We still have toothpaste on, that teeth weren't brushed. We still didn't get those lunches. And we sit around the dinner table and we look at that data and we go, well, there it is. And then we move on and we do nothing. There's no accountability there. That's a total lack of accountability, and to expect anything to change based on that type of behavior is foolish. But if we sit at the table and we talk about that and we say, okay, here's what we're going to do different. We're going to set our clock 15 minutes earlier until we can get this right. There's accountability because we didn't get it right this time. Or we're going to come home, and instead of having playtime out in the yard, kids, we're going to go clean up what we should have done this morning, and then we're going to have some time to think about how we can do better. That's accountability. So some type of accountability. Same thing in the business world, and this is really hard, but if we don't constantly look at those actionable things we can do to change the data, then the data's never, it's a story, right? But it's a story that has no meaning because there's no action behind it. So when we look at that data, the question we ought to be asking is, if we're not getting the results that we want, this data says we continue to get the wrong results or the results that are underperforming, what are we going to do differently? What are we going to do differently? It's a great question to ask, and let our teams saturate that, think about that, process that, and come back to us with, here's what we're going to do differently. We have to keep asking that question over and over and over and over again. And ultimately, from an accountability standpoint, if you're at the leadership team level, that accountability could be that you're no longer at that leadership level if you can't get results, if you can't perform. At that management level, it might mean that we've got to measure different things. We've got to manage our resources differently. At the employee level, it's about, are we doing what we're supposed to every day on our job in a way in which we're supposed to do it? If we're truly held accountable to that, that means that if we continue not to do that, it should never be a surprise when they change directions, or when they say, you know what, you're not getting it done. We've talked about it. We've held you accountable. We've done everything we can. The natural result of that is you no longer have a job, or we move you to another place in the company. So I think there's some actionable items that have to follow the data, and that equals accountability.
So accountability is that third piece of the equation that really creates the behavior, the action, the follow-up,
That's right.
the engagement, the conversations. Once you have established goals and you've created the data, it's telling you the story.
Yeah.
So accountability, I think, is probably difficult for a lot of people. A lot of leaders at home, just running 90 to nothing. So that behavior piece, I think it's pretty difficult. How do you make that easy? Thoughts?
No, it's not easy. It's just hard, and it's really hard when you're friends with the people you work with. People will tell us, watch those lines in leadership, be careful. We all, in a small business that we run, we operate a small business, and we love our team and we love our people. It's hard sometimes to have accountability around that because of that relationship that we have. Same thing is true in the corporate world and teams, and you work with these people every day. But the professionals tell us, the experts tell us, be careful. In order to have accountability, you can't always be friends. You can't be a best friend. There's a relationship piece there. Now, the new generation of worker coming out, that millennial, one of the things we're seeing is they hate accountability. And I'm wondering, is it that they hate accountability, or do they hate the way we provide accountability? Which might be another conversation for us to have, but I suspect the latter is true.
This has been Digging In with host Melissa Hambrick-Jackson and guest Dr. Larry Little. Thank you for joining us. We hope you return for the final part as Larry and Melissa discuss what it looks like when you have all of the components for the below-the-line equation. To learn more about the concepts from this video, you can find Dr. Larry Little's book, Crossing the Line, available to purchase on Amazon or our website, eaglecenterforleadership.com. You can also find the podcast, Crossing the Line with Larry Little, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or online at eaglecenterforleadership.com. Thank you for watching.